There's this really universal script for growing up, right? Like,
Yeah.
you pack up the boxes, you load up the car, you hug your kid in the driveway.
Yeah, the big send-off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you just watch them drive off to start their adult life, whether they're, I don't know, heading to a college dorm or some new job in a different city.
Or just a tiny apartment with, like, 3 roommates.
Right. But there's this shared understanding of the path they're taking. It's a milestone.
It is, yeah. It's a familiar one. Like, as a parent, you basically know the rules of the world your child is entering.
But imagine that car isn't heading to a starter apartment. Imagine your child is driving off to join a highly secluded, radically alternative community.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Completely different. One that entirely rejects the traditional societal script you just spent their whole life teaching them. Suddenly, that driveway goodbye isn't just a milestone. It's a profound rupture.
And for the parents left standing there, right, watching those taillights disappear, that rupture has to be utterly terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. They're just left with this massive void of information and a desperate desire to basically pull their kid back into a world they actually understand.
Right, because the anxiety in that scenario is just primal. The parents feel like they're losing their child, and not just to distance, but to a completely foreign ideology.
Which is exactly what makes the source material for today's deep dive so incredibly compelling. So we're looking at this bilingual document from February 29, 2020.
Okay.
It's titled An Open Letter to the Parents of Chanyuan Celestials. And it was written by a man named Xuefeng.
Ah, right, the guide of the community.
Exactly. He's the self-appointed guide of a community known as Lifechanyuan. His followers, the people who packed up those cars and left traditional society behind, they live together in a place they call the New Oasis for Life.
And they call themselves Chanyuan Celestials.
Yep, inside the community, that's what they go by.
To really understand the stakes of this letter, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the audience Xuefeng is talking to.
Right, the parents.
Exactly. These are anxious, skeptical, and honestly, probably furious parents. They're fundamentally primed to distrust this guy.
Yeah, they view him as the man who lured their kids away.
Exactly.
And I should say right up front, our mission today is not to validate those frantic parents, nor are we endorsing the unconventional lifestyle of the Lifechanyuan community.
Right, we're keeping it strictly analytical.
Totally impartial. We are taking an entirely impartial look at the raw architecture of Xuefeng's argument here. We really just want to dissect the fascinating rhetorical strategies he uses.
Because he's trying to justify his community to outsiders who are, frankly, actively hoping for his failure.
Right. We want to understand that psychological push and pull between traditional family expectations and these radical alternative lifestyles.
And this document, it's a masterclass in persuasion under extreme pressure. When you read it, you see the actual mechanics of how a leader attempts to completely reshape a hostile narrative.
It really is. So let's look at how he opens this dialogue, because it is just brilliant in its misdirection. Like, if I were writing a letter to a group of angry parents who thought I was running some dangerous commune, my first instinct would be to start with, like, a defensive FAQ.
Right. Like, here are the safety rules, here's our daily schedule.
Exactly. I'd want to immediately list administrative details to prove everything is totally normal. But Xuefeng doesn't do that at all.
No, he goes in a completely different direction.
He starts by quoting ancient classical Chinese poetry about the sorrow of mothers.
He bypasses logic entirely. He just goes straight for the cultural jugular.
It's so intense. He quotes this famous poem about the thread in the hands of a loving mother who makes clothes for her wayward boy, dreading the delays that keep him out late. And then he follows it up with another poem about a white-haired mother wailing at her door, desperately pulling at her son's sleeves.
To stop him from leaving to join the Taoists in the Wangwu Mountains, right?
Yes. It is incredibly heavy emotional imagery to just drop right at the start.
Well, the psychological mechanism at play here is all about establishing an effective bridge.
An effective bridge.
Yeah. Basically, when an audience believes you're their enemy, they have their logical defenses raised to the absolute max.
Right, they're ready for a fight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if Xuefeng started with facts and figures, the parents would just immediately argue with those facts.
Oh, I see.
By leading with shared cultural touchstones of parental sacrifice, he forces them into a state of cognitive dissonance. They expect a radical outsider trying to destroy their family values, right?
Yeah.
But instead, they're met with someone who appears to revere the very same ancient sorrows and maternal sacrifices that they're currently experiencing.
That's wow. He even explicitly states, quote, Once a son and now a father, I understand both the love of parents and of their children.
See, positioning himself as one of them.
He is. He claims his grand purpose is to create an era where parents and children can be happy and worry-free. But reading this, I couldn't help but think of, like, a CEO walking into a brutal corporate layoff meeting.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Like, everyone is terrified for their livelihoods, and the CEO starts the presentation by reciting a poem about the enduring importance of family.
Right, just totally tone deaf to the immediate panic.
Exactly. It feels like this massive emotional softening tactic to just disarm the room before dropping the real news.
That is a highly accurate comparison. He is essentially saying, I know the cultural script you cherish. I am not ignorant of your pain. I am validating it.
Validating it so they'll put their guard down.
Precisely. He wants them to see him not as a threat, but as a fellow parent who feels the exact same cultural weight. It's this strategic deployment of empathy designed to lower the temperature in the room so his actual arguments might even be heard.
But I mean, all the ancient poetry in the world isn't going to distract a parent who is absolutely convinced their child is trapped in a massive financial scam.
No, eventually you have to address the elephant in the room.
And he does. He pivots to it very directly. He names their fears outright. He acknowledges they're terrified, their children are being deceived, that this lifestyle will cause them future trouble, and that this one is dark, that the parents will ultimately have no one to bury them.
Bringing those unstated fears into the light is a really classic rhetorical device. By naming the parents' darkest anxieties, he controls how those anxieties are addressed.
Right. He doesn't wait to be accused.
Exactly. He doesn't let the parents accuse him. He anticipates the accusation.
So, to counter this fear of deception, he leans into demographics. He points out that the new Oasis for Life isn't some fly-by-night operation. As of this letter in February 2020, he says it had been operating for 11 years, since April 2009.
Which is a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and he highlights that there are nearly 200 residents, and they range from 4-year-old children to seniors in their 80s.
The logic he employs there is explicitly designed to disrupt the typical profile of a scam.
How so?
Well, a financial con generally targets a very specific demographic, right? Usually people with disposable income or maybe folks seeking a quick return on an investment.
Right, right.
So by emphasizing the multi-generational nature of the new Oasis, ranging from toddlers to octogenarians, he is arguing that the community operates more like a sustainable village than a manipulative trap. Like, who runs a scam on a 4-year-old?
Or an 80-year-old.
Yeah.
This is a clever way to reframe the community's makeup. But his next defense mechanism, this is where things get truly wild to me.
Oh, the government investigators part.
Yes. To prove they aren't engaged in illegal activities, he brings up government scrutiny. He claims that over the years, the government has sent nearly 600 investigators to visit the home. 600.
It's an incredible number.
And his argument is basically, look, if we were doing something illegal, the government would have shut us down, announced it to the media, and arrested us. But no members have been arrested, and no freedoms have been restricted.
That specific rhetorical pivot is known in crisis communication as stealing thunder.
Stealing thunder.
Yeah. When you have a massive, glaring, negative-like being under constant surveillance and intense investigation, you really can't hide it. So you own it. You reframe it as a strength before your opponents can use it as a weapon against you.
But the logic is just so twisted. Like, if my neighbor comes up to me and says, hey, don't worry about me, the police have raided my house 600 times and they haven't found a reason to arrest me yet, my immediate reaction is not relief.
No, of course not.
My reaction is, I am moving away from you immediately because why are the police at your house 600 times? To an outsider, intense, repetitive government investigation is a massive red flag. It's not a badge of honor.
To a neutral observer, absolutely, it's a red flag. But Xuefeng is trying to flip a grueling stress test into an endorsement of transparency.
Right.
He's telling the parents that the community has survived the ultimate, most hostile audit possible. If the most powerful entity in the country couldn't find a reason to dismantle them, how could the parents possibly believe it's just a simple scam?
And he doubles down on this extreme transparency, too. He tells the parents they don't even have to take his word for it. He basically invites them to go find any former resident of the community and ask if they were ever harmed or deceived.
He practically dares them.
He does. He says if anyone says yes, the parents have every right to sue him.
which is just a brilliant psychological maneuver. He takes the heavy burden of proof off of his own shoulders and places it entirely back onto the parents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he paralyzes the accuser with this illusion of total openness. It makes the parents feel that, well, if they can't immediately produce a victim, their anxieties might actually be baseless.
That is so manipulative. And once he feels he's neutralized those legal and financial fears, he completely goes on the offensive. This is where he stops playing defense and actively starts reshaping the narrative around the children themselves.
Right, the pivot from negative to positive.
Exactly. He tackles the parents' deep feelings of abandonment by just completely redefining the concept of a good child.
Up until this point in the letter, he's just been managing the parents' negative emotions. Now, he's attempting to manufacture positive ones, specifically pride and a sense of exclusivity.
He describes life in the oasis as near heavenly. He claims it's so beautiful that people trapped in traditional society literally cannot even comprehend it.
Setting them apart.
Yeah. And then he directly addresses filial piety, that ancient virtue of respect for one's parents, which the parents obviously feel has been completely violated by their kids leaving.
Naturally.
But Xuefeng claims that Chanyuan values strictly require filial piety. In fact, he says they don't even allow unfilial people to join the community at all.
Think about the cognitive friction that creates for a traditional parent.
That must make their head spin.
Totally. The parent feels abandoned, which is basically the ultimate act of being unfilial. But Xuefeng is telling them that their child's presence in his community is actually proof of their supreme filial piety.
Because he supposedly filters out anyone who doesn't respect their parents.
Exactly. He is just twisting the definition of the word to suit his own environment.
And he makes this incredibly bold guarantee to back it up. He tells the parents, look, if you genuinely feel your child is being unfaithful to you by living here, complain to me. Let me know, and I will strongly persuade them to leave the oasis and go back home to you.
And that offer to send them home is very likely a calculated bluff.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. It creates the illusion of a completely open door, and that reduces the parents' feeling that their child is being held hostage. If the door is open, it can't be a trap.
Right. But the contradiction in his logic right after this is just glaring. Immediately after promising to kick the kids out if the parents complain, he heaps an unbelievable amount of praise on these followers.
Oh, he really lays it on thick.
He calls them gem-quality people. He says they're wise, kind, and hardworking. Then he drops this line. He says, perhaps I love your children more than you do as parents. I'm not boasting. You can ask them.
Telling a parent you love their child more than they do. I mean, that is an extraordinarily aggressive territorial claim over the followers' loyalty.
It's wild. It's like a bizarre communal version of being the ultimate teacher's pet.
Huh. Yeah.
Imagine going to a parent-teacher conference, and the teacher looks across the table and says, your child is a generational genius, and honestly, I appreciate their brilliance far more than you ever could.
It would not go over well.
Not at all. And if you truly believed you had cultivated this exclusive group of gem-quality individuals, why would you eagerly promise to kick them out and send them away the second a parent on the outside complained? It doesn't make sense.
Because the goal isn't actually to send anyone home.
Right.
The goal is to manipulate the parent's ego. Xuefeng is trying to transform the act of joining this community into a high-status achievement. By citing the incredibly high moral standards supposedly required to enter, he's telling the parents that their children are elite.
So he's turning it into the spiritual equivalent of, like, getting accepted into Harvard.
Exactly that. He even flatters the parents directly. He suggests that their children's ability to enter this near-heavenly home means the parents themselves must have accrued spiritual wealth from a previous life.
Wow. Flattery from out of nowhere.
He wants the parents to stop viewing their child as a naive victim of a cult and start viewing them as an exceptional winner who qualified for this utopian society. Because if you can make the parents feel proud of the exclusivity, they are far less likely to demand the child come home.
And he uses a very specific piece of social proof to solidify this. He claims that nearly half of the young people living in the home were actually brought or sent there by their own parents. He kind of challenges the skeptics by implying, look at all these other parents who recognize how incredible this place is. Are they all stupid?
And social proof is highly effective in situations of high uncertainty. If a parent is unsure about this community, hearing that 50% of the residents were placed there by other parents makes their own skepticism feel like an outlier.
Like they're the ones who are out of the loop.
Exactly. It gaslights them into thinking their anxiety is the problem, not the community.
Okay, so Xuefeng has built up this image of gem-quality children living in a near-heavenly utopia. But a lingering question really remains here. If these kids are so incredible, and they supposedly love their parents so much, why shouldn't they just go home to traditional society and be a family again?
Right. If they're so great, they can be great at home.
Exactly. So to answer this, Xuefeng has to do something far more aggressive than just praising his own community.
Yeah.
He has to actively tear down the traditional path of life.
He can't simply argue that his alternative lifestyle is better. He has to convince the parents that the traditional lifestyle they want their children to return to is actively toxic.
And doomed to fail.
Exactly.
He paints a really grim picture of the traditional path. He lists out all the expectations: get married, have a career, support aging parents, please the neighbors, glorify the ancestors.
The standard cultural checklist.
Yeah. And he points out that humans have walked this road for thousands of years, and it is nothing but an unnecessarily difficult, bitter road. He even shares this personal anecdote, saying he was abroad for 8 years once and missed his parents terribly, but he realized that reality is much crueler than the ideal. He's essentially telling the kids, you can't just go home because you want to, because the real world will crush you.
What makes this section so potent is that he is tapping into a universal truth. Fulfilling societal expectations is genuinely exhausting.
It really is.
The parents reading this letter have likely lived that exact bitter road. They've worked hard, stressed over money, tried to please their neighbors. By validating the silent, grinding struggles the parents themselves have faced, he makes his critique of traditional society deeply resonant.
It makes a lot of sense. And this sets the stage for what I think is the most intense analogy in the entire letter.
A cliff analogy.
Yes. He compares the children's new lifestyle in the community to climbing a steep cliff. He tells the parents, once your child starts climbing this cliff, there is no possibility of turning back. They have to reach the top to have the capital to repay their parents.
The cliff analogy is just a masterful application of the sunk cost fallacy applied to a person's entire life trajectory.
He delivers this stark, terrifying warning. He says if parents try to drag their children down or stand at the bottom shouting, come down quickly, it will result in catastrophic failure.
Yep.
He warns it will ruin the children's futures entirely and cause them to harbor lifelong resentment toward the parents.
Notice how he completely inverts the narrative of a rescue mission there.
That is exactly what I got stuck on. If you are climbing a mountain and there's literally no physical way to turn back if you get tired or change your mind, that isn't a journey. That is the exact definition of a trap.
It really is.
It reminds me of a desperate startup founder cornering their early investors and saying, look, if you pull your funding right now, the entire company dies, everything collapses, and the bankruptcy will be entirely your fault.
Wow. Yeah.
He is weaponizing the parents' own protective instincts.
That is the psychological crux of the cliff analogy. A parent's natural instinct when they see their child on a precarious, dangerous cliff is to yell, come down, it's not safe.
Of course.
Xuefeng takes that deep biological instinct to save their child and redefines it as an act of sabotage. He tells them, if you intervene, you aren't catching them, you are pulling them to their death.
He makes staying in the community the only possible route to survival and success.
And by raising the emotional stakes to a matter of life and death, he paralyzes the parents. They become too terrified of causing this supposed catastrophic fall to ever even ask their children to come home. They're held psychologically hostage by their own love.
That is so dark. But even with these massive emotional and spiritual stakes established, Xuefeng knows he still has a major vulnerability.
Right, practicalities.
Yeah. He hasn't answered the most grounded earthly fear the parents have. The very fear he acknowledged at the beginning of the letter. If these kids are off climbing spiritual cliffs in some utopian commune, who's going to pay for the parents' care when they get old?
Especially in cultures where elder care is deeply tied to filial duty and financial support from children, the fear of aging alone in poverty is profound.
It's a huge deal.
A parent might be convinced to let their child seek enlightenment, sure, but they still need to know how they are going to buy groceries when they are 80.
Right. And knowing this, Xuefeng saves his most calculated transactional argument for the very end. He directly addresses the old age care of the parents. He knows he's been thinking about this specific problem for 10 years, particularly for families where the celestial is an only child.
Okay, so he's had a long time to figure this out.
Apparently. And he makes this grand promise. He claims he has an ambition, a comprehensive plan, to ensure that every single parent enjoys a happy old age and isn't left out in the cold.
I mean, it sounds like the ultimate reassuring promise, right? Tying up the final loose end of their anxiety.
It does, until you read the fine print.
Ah.
He introduces a massive, staggering condition to this elder care plan. He explicitly states that he will enact this grand plan to let them enjoy their old age only once the government acquiesces to Lifechanyuan and stops suppressing us.
Oh, wow. It is the ultimate bargaining chip.
It really is.
He's transforming a spiritual letter into a political transaction.
He is basically holding their retirement hostage. He is looking at these anxious, aging parents and saying, your peaceful, financially secure old age is entirely dependent on my highly controversial community surviving intense government pressure.
Yep.
He ties their literal physical security to his own political survival.
If you analyze the mechanics of leverage there, it is a brilliant, albeit totally ruthless maneuver.
Ruthless is the right word.
Throughout the entire letter, he has been managing their emotions, right? Soothing them with poetry, disarming them with that aggressive transparency, flattering them with exclusivity, and then paralyzing them with the cliff analogy.
Right.
But here at the climax, he aligns his own survival with their most vulnerable earthly need.
He takes people who are actively rooting for the government to shut him down and forces them to switch teams.
Exactly. He turns his biggest skeptics into human shields and highly motivated allies. Because in that final paragraph, he makes it absolutely clear. If the government shuts down Lifechanyuan, the parents don't just lose their children's community, they lose their own guaranteed retirement plan.
That is just wow.
Suddenly, the parents have a vested personal financial interest in the community's success and in getting the authorities to just back off.
It is an incredible journey of manipulation when you lay it all out. Like, he starts with the soft thread in the hands of a loving mother and ends with, I will pay for your nursing home, but only if you help me get the government off my back.
It perfectly distills the tension between profound emotional appeals and the stark transactional realities that really govern these high-control environments.
Which, brings us back to you listening to this right now. You might be wondering, why spend our time dissecting an obscure open letter from 2020 written to the parents of a niche community?
Right. What's the broader application?
Exactly. Because the rhetorical architecture we just unpacked is not isolated to this one man or this one group. These tactics are universal.
Understanding the mechanics of these arguments allows you to see the scaffolding behind the words, really, no matter who is speaking to you.
Think about the strategies we covered today. Using a person's deepest cultural values to disarm their logical critiques.
Yep.
Flipping a massive vulnerability like intense scrutiny into a bizarre proof of your own resilience. Redefining common words like loyalty or success so that anyone who disagrees with you is automatically cast as a failure.
The changing of definitions is so common.
It really is. Using high stakes, no turning back analogies to trap people into staying the course, and ultimately tying someone's personal security to your own survival. You see these exact tactics deployed everywhere. In high-pressure corporate environments, in aggressive political campaigns, in manipulative startup pitches, and especially in toxic personal relationships.
When you understand how language is weaponized to shift the burden of proof and redefine reality, you just become far less susceptible to it. Which kind of leaves us with a lingering thought to consider today, building on the core premise of Xuefeng's letter.
What's the final thought?
Well, Xuefeng is asking these parents, and by extension their children, to trade the difficult, exhausting traditional path that humanity has navigated for thousands of years for this near-heavenly alternative.
Right.
But that utopian alternative demands total commitment and a severing of conventional earthly ties. So if someone presented you with a radically different, supposedly perfect way of living, but it required you to completely detach from the traditional expectations, the struggles, and the very identity of your family and society, how much of your own self would you be willing to sacrifice for that promise?
It is a really heavy question. And, brings us right back to that car idling in the driveway. When you pack up everything you know to head toward a destination that rejects the very ground you grew up on, you aren't just moving out, you are stepping off the edge of the known map. And once you start driving, the only question left is whether you are truly heading toward an oasis or if you've just been convinced to drive straight off a cliff.